So with that, why don't we go ahead and get started? We have Chris Salemi on today. Chris will speak first. He's our Vice President of Governmental and Strategic Affairs. He's the one that will provide the majority of the information today. So Chris, why don't I go ahead and kick it off to you?
Thanks so much, Troy. Again, Chris Salemi, Government and Strategic Affairs here at Airspan Networks. I'm based out of Washington, D.C., and as Troy put it, I have been following closely a lot of the money flowing out of not just Congress, but the agencies as well over the last year in particular, that has been trickling down to the states and whatnot to help address broadband connectivity issue. So hopefully today this will be a good educational session for you, a start of many potentially, to walk you through what is going on, in particular here, the National Telecommunications Information Administration. We're going to be focusing on today NTIA's Broadband Infrastructure Program. So let me just start by saying, while closing the digital divide has been a high priority in Congress and at the relevant agencies for the last few years, with a keen focus and a determined focus on rural and tribal communities, the emphasis to address this challenge has never been more apparent since the pandemic. So since late last year, we've seen two major funding packages move through Congress for broadband deployment at the state and federal level. One of those packages that came out late last year, under the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021, Congress established and funded 3 programs under the NTIA. Let me just give you 2 of the 3, and then we'll focus on which one we're going to be talking about today, the Broadband Infrastructure Program. So just quickly, the first one is the Broadband Connectivity Grants Program, which directs $988 million for eligible entities, tribal governments, to participate in the award process for that money. The application process there closes September 1st. We will be following up with you potentially on this application process, but again, September 1st. The other one in queue is the Connecting Minority Communities Pilot Program. That's $285 million grant program for historically Black colleges and universities. There has not been a notice of funding opportunity released yet by NTIA on this, so we're still waiting on further details. So the third one is what we're going to focus on today. Let's start with the program description here. And again, we're kind of going to, because we're pressed for time, we'll give you a high-level description, but $288 million in grants are being made available for the deployment of broadband infrastructure in underserved, namely rural areas under this program. However, NTIA won't rule out, from what we've been told, other areas depending on the application and where the focus of the applicant is looking at. Under eligibility, eligible applicants are basically recipients who are in covered partnerships between state and locals and fixed broadband providers. Areas which broadband service is not available, well, we're talking about eligible service areas here. So we're looking at a census block in which broadband service is not available at one or more households or businesses in the census block. So that's what we're looking at here. There's an award process here that's taking place, and the awards are expected to range between $5 million and $30 million. So if you're looking at about $5 to $30 million out of $288 million that's been allotted for this program, you don't have a big window. I can't imagine, and we can't imagine, that NTIA is going to hand out a few $30 million awards. So we're thinking, and I think it's safe to assume that most of these awards are going to look around $5 million, maybe just north of that, depending on what the applicant provides. But also completed applications for this process, and this is important now, folks, are due August 17th, 11:59 p.m. August 17th, with the awards expected to be selected and processed by November 15th. We are reaching out to NTIA to make sure that their ducks are in a row, so things are ready to go by August 17th. As you know, with many of these government agencies. There's a lot to tackle here. These programs, as you know, they're working on several, and you know, getting all of this lined up for the due date isn't always something that's expected or is going to necessarily happen. So we've been leaning on NTIA to make sure that they have everything lined up. So when August 17th comes around and the applicants have submitted their applications, things are good to go and it's all cooked. So again, I think the big takeaway here, November 15th is the final date, but you need to get your applications in by August 17th, 11:59 p.m. Let's jump to slide number 2. So program priorities. What are some of the program priorities? Serve the greatest number of residents, okay? NTIA will prioritize projects that serve the greatest number of residents, serve an area with less than 50,000 residents. Are cost effective, they're looking for cost effectiveness here, and provide service that is at least 100 down, 20 up. Along with the fact that no provider has been selected to receive or is otherwise receiving federal or state funding to deploy qualifying service in the specific area where the household is located by the date certain. So keeping all that in mind here, there are these priorities and parameters that you need to be aware of. Moving down and still stay on this slide, for applicants, NTIA is encouraging applicants to include future-proof infrastructure. That includes ORAN, which is great. We actually spoke to NTIA a couple of months ago, and you know about the, some of you or most of you are aware about the open RAN solutions that Airspan offers, and the fact that they were included that in this program we found to be exciting and is a good development for ORAN in general. So what you're looking at is not just ORAN, but in future-proof infrastructure. But I think when you hear future-proof infrastructure, most of you who hear anything out of the Biden administration or Congress know that that's a term that's come out of the Biden administration now for the last several months. It does have a leaning towards fiber, but that does not mean that you should be discouraged that this is they're only going to take fiber, because they won't. You know, obviously we're keenly focused on this, and we would encourage you to consider they are going to be considering tech neutral services. Just to break things down here before I wrap up, we have a number of programs moving through, not just NTIA but Congress itself, and the FCC as well. All these relevant agencies with a ton of money, and I like to joke that you're now seeing more money move through DC than spin, and that's been a long time. So we've got good money moving through. So take a look at this slide. What you see here is that FCC, obviously CAF, you're all very familiar with CAF, Connect America Fund, that's through FCC. Reconnect is through USDA. And then you have the Broadband Infrastructure Program through NTIA. CAF, as you know, is a reverse auction. NTIA is not. You have different sort of eligibility thresholds as well. And the timeline on these are different. NTIA's Broadband Infrastructure Program, you have 1 year. There is 1 year. As funding, it's one shot, one quick injection. At USDA and CAF are not. So there are some differences here, not to be confused, and we can talk offline if need be or answer any questions in that regard. But in focus, NTIA is definitely different here. 288 million with one shot of injection of money in 1 year to build out. Airspan's advantages. We are, from what we're hearing out of NTIA, it's likely that no more than 20 grants will be awarded under this highly competitive program. And again, that's not confirmed. But if you do the math, you know, you're not looking at more, you know, 7, 8, maybe 9 million per recipient. So again, it's highly competitive landscape out there. We're here at Airspan, you know, we feel our products make a good fit for partnership because, you know, we can meet those build out requirements, those performance standards, and are willing to offer a 10% match, which is encouraged by NTIA in their notice of funding opportunity that was released 2 months ago. Under our focus, so where have we focused as Airspan so far leading up to August 17th? We've been reaching out to broadband offices and commerce authorities throughout the country at the state level and state and local level to gauge their interest in the program program participation. Where are they? So while the responses have varied as we've reached out to basically nearly all 50 states, we have begun dialogue with several of those states. For example, Virginia, Indiana, and Iowa have all responded to us and have come back asking us to provide and identify counties or communities within their states they'd like us to connect them with, or they'd like us to connect them with, and rural communities that we think that are a good fit for Airspan and potential partnerships. So there is some layers to this, and we're making good progress. Again, we have identified some of these communities. Now, again, we are looking for rural communities, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a rural community. But again, that's where we're looking for, and that's where this NOFO in the announcement is leaning towards. And then just one other area, and I know I'll pass it over to Troy, and he can break it down a little bit more. But we've got a number of partnerships and are working closely to set up some more in very tribal reservations, in particular in South Dakota as well. For example, Rosebud being one of them, where our products are working, and we have made some very good progress to help address the broadband needs of many tribal elders and folks on those reservations. So, Airspan has the equipment and the expertise to address these programs and particularly infrastructure programs. So we look forward to working with you guys and answering any questions going forward. And what I'll do now is kick it over to Troy, who can elaborate a little bit more on some of the background on Mimosa in particular and how that is going to be beneficial to this program going forward.
Hi, my name is Troy Conley. I'm the General Manager of North America for Airspan Networks. I'm kind of a newbie. I've been here about 2 years now, a little over 2 years. I've been in telecommunications my entire career, that when you see the gray hair on the screen, you can get a feel for just how long that is. So I've been around for a long time. I started on the copper and fiber side of the house, and I've only been in the wireless side for about the last 10 years. But I love being on the wireless because I see where wireless technology is right now. It's basically where copper and fiber was in the mid to late 90s, as it's continuing to mature and evolve, and the products get smaller and the costs go down, but the speeds get higher. Just in the last 10 years in wireless, we've seen speeds, go up by a factor of 100 almost on the wireless products. So a lot of people don't know a whole lot about Airspan. We haven't really done a lot in the mass market in the US. We've basically focused on large customers and built custom products for them. But with CBRS, that gave us a mass market product for the US. And it's interesting that we're actually the 4th largest LTE wireless provider in the world. We're behind Ericsson, Nokia, and Huawei, but other than that, we're the 4th largest provider in the world. We're a big company, and most importantly, I think particularly for these applications, we're US based. So that carries a lot of weight when you're applying for things. We'll talk about 4G and 5G today. We'll talk about unlicensed PTP and PNP products, kind of the way it would fit into these bids that you're going to make to get this money, and show you what we have. It's not going to be it's not going to be a big sales presentation. I've only got a couple slides. What we wanted to have Chris talk about is the most important part of this, but I'll just show you where we think our products fit into this, your application process. So a lot of questions. We looked at the questions that came in with the registrants before we started, and there were a lot of questions about in-loss and loss and that sort of thing. And that's when you're talking about really rural environments, that's absolutely a key. And as much as wireless has evolved, physics are physics. You're not going to get a wireless signal through a mountain, and you're not going to get it through dense trees. And that's we understand that. That's why we have a couple product lines. We'll talk about an unlicensed product line next. That's the Mimosa side of the house. Airspan bought Mimosa a little over 2 years ago to complement the product line. Airspan had a fantastic and has a fantastic 4G product line, and we'll be introducing our 5G O-RAN systems towards the end of this year. But to get a fully comprehensive wireless package, that's when Mimosa came into the fold here. What we have for this, for your more in-loss, your non-line of sight type applications, we have our 4G LTE products. We have different sizes of product. We have our Air Harmony mini macro systems. We've got an airspeed line. That's our small cell systems. We have these in band 48. So if you're going to be deploying in CBRS, we have a model for you in band 48. And particularly if you're going after the tribal areas are all band 41. We have an Air Harmony system that works in the band 41 as well, so you can serve 2.5 gigahertz. And for those of you who are more cable company oriented, we also have a strand mounted system that you can mount on the strand that can be fed either with fiber or with DOCSIS. So we have a complete product line, and I'm not going to go into the inside products, but we have LTE products for the enterprise as well. So we've got a full suite, and these products work best in the near and non-line of sight type applications because of the way that they perpetuate. Our Mimosa products, this is the non-line of sight. This is a product line that we're particularly proud of. I mean, we're seeing speeds in our next generation systems that we're going to trial this year, that's approaching 3 gig. So you'll be able to push, a gigabit. You're going to do sharing with the systems, but you'll be able to push a gig easily to a customer. So the 100 meg requirement is an easy stretch for what these products can do right now. And we've got point-to-point products. So even if you're going to go fiber for the last mile and you need to get out there and get to that, point of presence wherever you're going to kick fiber off from, we've got a full suite of we've got a full suite of point-to-point products. And then of course, we've got our point-to-multipoint products. To give you an idea what we have, we've got licensed and unlicensed point-to-point products. We've got the B11 for a licensed product. We've got unlicensed product in the B5 and the B5C. And then of course, we've got our cost-effective point-to-multipoint product, the C5X product family. And there was Chris brought up a point on one of the early slides. I think your bid is going to be best when it's cost-effective. And if you can deliver 100 meg, 120 like they're asking for, and you're only paying $200 a subscriber for it or something like that to be able to do it, I think your bid's going to look a lot better than it will be if you're going to take fiber all the way out there. Now, like I said, I started my career on the fiber side of the house. Certainly that is the be all end all for delivering high-speed broadband. But at the end of the day, you still got to cut the ground, or you still got to hang it somewhere, and it's expensive to take it out, particularly in these really rural areas. And products like this, like the Airspan LTE products and the Mimosa point-to-multipoint fixed wireless access products, offers a cost-effective alternative to having to take fiber out there. And I would almost take exception to say, what was the government said, that it's got to be future-proof. I mean, when we deliver 100 meg out of a tower to a home, I mean, that's about as future-proof as you're going to get. You can do it. You can hang those things on a tower in a matter of weeks and not have to dig through the earth to be able to get fiber out there. So we think it's a good cost-effective solution. It meets the requirements of what the government's looking for in this, and it gives you, a competitive advantage by being cost-effective. I said cost-effective way too many times. So we thank you for your time very much in sitting in here today. So we're going to open it up some questions.
Really quickly, I just want to clarify, in their queuing up the questions, NTIA will interpret qualifying broadband service to mean 25.3, which obviously, as you know, is the standard now. So we know that, again, as I pointed out, fiber is what the administration is looking at for when they talk about future-proof. But and Troy's stated and I have stated, you know, we obviously meet all of these performance standards Airspan does going forward. But as it stands for this program, broadband service, qualifying broadband service means 2530.
Yeah, 25.3 is a have to have, 120 is a want to have.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Troy. Let's take some questions here. The first question is this funding just for the big companies getting the money, or small WISP can get some?
So my interpretation of that is that I think NTIA is willing to show the love wherever they can and whoever the applicant is. This doesn't necessarily mean, you know, Charter is going to come in there or some big guy, Verizon, for example, and take it all. I you know, eat up an application or two. You know, this is for whoever can present the most cost-effective application in you know, that reaches the time requirements in the money, and potentially throw down a 10% of their own to front, you know, most attractive looking application.
I think the big companies have had their chances in the past to go after these rural areas, and they've decided not to, right? I mean, that's why we continue to have these funding bills that are coming out of Congress, because the big companies have refused to deliver service to these rural areas.
That is correct.
All right, next question. How can we identify zip codes and geographic areas eligible for NTIA grants?
So I think what we're doing here at Airspan, and again, that can be a tough call because, you know, each state has different needs, and that's why we've been proactively reaching out to these state broadband departments and commerce authorities to hear out what they have to say, where their concerns may lay, specifically in a state. And you know, I mean, this is a huge country, and each state has a lot of rural areas, some more than others. But you know, we are taking it to the states, asking them where they can connect us, with whom they can connect us with, and whose needs are the highest priority.
I think in the past, the government, when they've done funding programs like CAF or RDOF or things like that, they've actually published a map and said, these are the census blocks that we see as being underserved. And that's how they've done that. NTIA is taking a little bit different approach by not having a map. That's the guideline that the other agencies have done. And they're actually reaching out to the states, and they're saying, hey, do you guys have any areas in your particular states that have spots like this that are really underserved? So I think that's probably the first point that they're going to, right, Chris, is the states, and then the states will talk to communities. And that's why it's important to be able for you to have an interface with, you know, somebody in governmental affairs in your state to say, hey, I want some of this cash, I can do this.
True.
Absolutely.
Correct.
All right, next question. We would like to know how we can go after and actually acquire some of this funding.
So, you know, you look at some of the programs that we pointed to, Reconnect, CAF, you know, they can be onerous at times. In this application process here with NTIA, you know, you need to make it, you need to really show NTIA the angle you're coming from, a potential partnership you have with someone or entity. You know, they're looking for folks to be creative on this. So it's all in that application, and the state, and you know, I know in our case, we are considering doing an application as well. You might need to consider outside counsel, and I know that doesn't come cheap at times, but something you might want to weigh if you don't have in-house folks who can handle that.
Should potential you know, folks that want to go after this, should they get in touch with their state governmental representative, Chris, or can they go directly to the NTIA and say, hey, we understand you have some money coming out and we'd like to take a shot at this?
I would say try your states, and I would point out to you though that states, for example, like Ohio, Governor DeWine has announced their own broadband initiative with money they received probably from American Rescue Plan. So states are taking their own initiative. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that they won't be interested or haven't announced this program, but I would encourage folks who want to take a hard look at this, go to your state, but go to the NTIA as well and reach out and ask questions because, you know, we're a month out here basically. So I think every avenue needs to be taken down.
I'm going to ask Chris one quick question. Chris, I've lived through CAF, I've lived through RDOF, I've lived through, you know, it all. This doesn't seem to be as onerous as a lot of those previous funding opportunities. Would you agree with me?
Yeah, I would, and I didn't mean to. I agree, and I didn't mean to come off like that. My point was that there are these previous programs that are very onerous, as you mentioned, and I know you've lived through all that, despite the grays. You know, this process is one obviously they'll scrutinize, so you make sure you have your I's and T's crossed, but dotted and crossed. But that being said, you know, they need to get this money out ASAP. And they need to deliver this broadband as soon as possible. And again, you get creative, you have a great shot. And it's all again laid out right here in this in the notice of funding and walks you through every piece.
All right. With that, the NOFO is actually a link that we've shared. Some of the folks on the call today have asked a question on how they can apply. The link is there. I will also send it afterwards as well with the recording and the presentation, which is, you know, a couple of you have asked that. The NOFO also links to the actual application page, which is grants.gov. So I will share that with you guys as well after this session. But we are up on time, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Chris, Troy, if you guys want to stay on and take more questions, you can. But anyone else who needs to drop off, have to drop off, feel free to. We can take a few more questions if you'd like. Chris, Troy, if you're up for it.
Sure.
If an area is already getting CAF funding, then it is not eligible. Is that correct? Same question on RDOF.
If it's encroaching on the eligible area in question under NTIA that they've identified, then right, that is true, correct. From my understanding of it, yes.
For both CAF and RDOF, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Let's take two more questions. And because of timing, if we didn't get to your questions, we'll contact you afterwards. All right. I have been trying to get numbers for budgeting a project from scratch in an area where this funding is available. I can't get responses from some power companies. Would working with Airspan help with this?
No. And I hate to say that, but, you know, if you're getting the pricing for the equipment, we can help you engineer the area. We can take a look at an area. We can run heat maps. We can help you engineer as to where your installations would be and what kind of rates that you're going to get at your homes. We can do all that, you know, from an equipment perspective. And having to deal with right-of-ways and that sort of thing for power companies, that's a whole new level of complication that, you know, we're not going to have any better success in than you are, because you probably already have a group that works with those guys on a day-to-day basis anyway. I'll tell you that in some cases, you know, in my past, I've seen that, you know, you have right-of-way issues and bigger things like that from these power companies, particularly when you have to cut the ground to be able to bury fiber or something like that. And in a lot of cases with a wireless solution, when you can do a point-to-point backhaul, that's going to go over where they're having problems. And you don't have a lot of the right-of-way issues that you would have on a wireless system that you're going to have on any sort of thing that you have to put in the ground. And that goes back to the timing for this particular program, that you have to have it installed relatively quickly. You can't be dealing with a lot of governments and a lot of bureaucracies, to get something like this out. And if you can pop a couple point-to-points up and run it out to a point-to-multipoint, or run it out to an ENO-B and serve LTE out of there, that may be a way around a lot of this bureaucracy.
Thanks, Troy. Last question. I'm in the process of establishing a small WISP right now. Once I have spent my money in the next month or so, or two, is it too late? Can I get reimbursed by any of these programs?
Not to my knowledge, no. I don't believe so, no.
Well, are you building the WISP in an area that qualifies? That's the one thing that I would ask. I think reimbursement's going to be really tough. Have you built the WISP, or are you building the WISP in an area that qualifies? And my next question would be, and if you can't get if you are and you can't get reimbursed for it, you may want to think about expanding the footprint if you're in one of these areas, and expanding the footprint and getting the money to fund your expansion. You may be able to build a company that's twice as big than you've built already, when you can get some more government money to be able to take your service out deeper and deeper if you're in one of these areas. Chris, what do you think about that?
It's a good question. I hear you, Troy. It's tough. We are talking about a lot of money moving through, but I don't know, if they're gonna if they make exceptions, if they view that as making an exception or not. But I think the service area is important there. If you are moving in on an eligible service area, yes, potentially. But I think it's a heavy lift.
All right. Well, that brings us to the close of this webinar. Thank you, Chris and Troy, for presenting such a great topic, and all the attendees who actually stayed on longer. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to you joining us again on our next webinar. Have a great day, everyone.